Beyond the Gates for Wednesday evening, February 26, 2025, the kind where you might sit by the window with a cup of tea, watching the world settle into dusk. But for the characters of Beyond the Gates, there's no peace to be found, not tonight, not with secrets simmering and hearts breaking. This is a story of love, betrayal, and the messy ties that bind a family together, even when they'd rather pull apart. Let's step into their world, where every conversation crackles with tension, and every choice feels like it could change everything. It all started with a car accident, one that Leslie caused. She didn't mean to, of course. Leslie's the kind of woman who keeps her head down, who's spent years mourning her late husband Alan, a good man whose absence still leaves a hollow ache in her chest. But that day, her mind wandered, maybe to Alan, maybe to the life she used to have, and her car swerved, metal crunching against metal. No one died, thank goodness, but the crash sent ripples through her family and friends, stirring up trouble no one saw coming. Donnie, her fiery niece, took it personally. She felt Leslie's mistake was another blow in a string of betrayals, especially when Anita and Vernon, Danny's parents, insisted the whole family attend Bill's wedding. To Donnie, that was the ultimate insult. Bill, her ex-husband, marrying Haley, the woman who'd torn her life apart. How could her own parents side with him? That Wednesday, the drama kicked into high gear. Anita and Vernon, sitting in their cozy living room with its faded floral curtains, made a pact. They'd always been a team, ever since they were young and starry-eyed, dreaming of a simple life before kids complicated everything. Back then, they thought they could change the world, raise perfect children, build a perfect family. Now, looking back, they chuckled at their naivety. Life had other plans, twisting their dreams into something raw and unpredictable. Their son Martin was at the heart of their latest worry. He needed protecting, though from what, they wouldn't say, not out loud. And protecting Martin meant swallowing their pride and showing up to Bill's wedding, even if it made their stomachs turn. Anita toyed with a darker thought: she could kill Bill. Oh, she wouldn't, not really, but the idea flickered through her mind like a shadow. Bill had hurt Donnie so badly, humiliated her by flaunting Haley, his new fiancée, all over town. Vernon, ever the voice of reason, squeezed her hand. "We can't call him out, not yet," he said softly. "And we don't talk about that night, you know why." Anita nodded, her lips tight. Whatever happened that night was a wound too deep to touch, a secret they'd buried long ago. Regrets? They had none, or so they told themselves. With resolve, they called the kids, Donnie, Martin, and the rest, to the house for a family meeting that night at 7. Something big was brewing. Meanwhile, Donnie was a storm waiting to strike. She'd already confronted Haley earlier that day, her words sharp as knives, only to stumble upon Vanessa, another family friend, cozying up to a mystery man. It was too much. Danny's world felt like it was crumbling, and Bill's wedding loomed like a dark cloud. She didn't want to go, but her parents left her no choice. By the time she stormed into Bill's office, she was a volcano ready to erupt. Bill, all polished suits and smug smiles, sat behind his desk, oblivious to the fury heading his way. Donnie grabbed one of his golf clubs, those ridiculous things he loved showing off, and started rearranging his pristine desk, papers flying, pens clattering to the floor. Caroline, his assistant, burst in with another staff member, wide-eyed and breathless. "Give me a minute," Bill barked, waving them off. They scurried out, clients trailing behind, leaving Bill and Donnie alone in the wreckage. "Well done," Bill said, smirking as he leaned back in his chair. "Feel better now?" Danny's hand twitched, and before she could stop herself, she slapped him, hard, right across his smug face. "I'd love to see you dead," she hissed, "but I'll settle for answers." "How dare you move that tramp into Fairmont?" Bill's eyes darkened. "Haley's not a tramp," he snapped, defending his fiancée with a loyalty Donnie had never seen when they were married. They argued bitterly, about where he belonged, about the life they'd built together. Donnie reminded him how he'd climbed the ladder using her degree, her money, her connections. Bill just laughed, cold and cruel. "Get over yourself, Donnie. You didn't make me, I made myself." The words cut deep. Danny's voice broke as she reminded him of his promises. Forever, he'd said. She'd given up everything for him, turned a blind eye to his affairs because she'd convinced herself some men couldn't stay faithful. Bill shrugged. "People change. We were in trouble long before Haley." He wasn't wrong, they'd been fraying for years, but hearing it out loud shattered her. "I'm sorry you can't accept our marriage is over," he said, softer now. "I love her, Donnie. It's time for me to move on." She slapped him again, tears burning her eyes, and stormed out. In the elevator, alone at last, she crumpled, sobbing so hard she could barely breathe. She'd never wish him well, never. Back in the office, Haley stepped in, noticing the shattered frame of Bill and Danny's wedding photo on the floor. The irony wasn't lost on her. She felt a pang for her best friend, Donnie, once, but Bill pulled her close. "I handled it," he murmured, and they kissed, sealing their future over the ruins of his past. Across town, Martin and Smitty faced their own turmoil. In their small apartment, Smitty woke to Martin thrashing in his sleep, caught in a nightmare so vivid it chilled the room. "Martin, wake up," Smitty whispered, shaking him gently. Martin's eyes flew open, wild and haunted. "Was it about that again?" Smitty asked, his voice trembling. Martin sat up, running a hand through his hair. "If it bothers you, I'll sleep in the guest room," he muttered, his tone heavy with guilt. Smitty frowned. "That's ridiculous. We're in this together." Whatever Martin dreamed of, something he'd buried deep, it was tearing at him, and Smitty could only watch, helpless. Elsewhere, at Ted and Nicole's house, the mood was lighter, at first. Ted, a warm, gray-haired man with a knack for storytelling, clapped Andre on the back. "Kat's doing wonders in marketing," he said proudly. Andre, their nephew, grinned. He'd been filming snippets of life at Ted's house and office for a project, and Ted didn't mind the camera one bit, especially since Nicole was up for an award. Andre's presence was a blessing. After surviving a plane crash that took his parents, Stan and Ira, 10 years ago, he'd found refuge with his aunt and uncle. "You saved me," he told them, his voice thick with gratitude. Ted pulled him into a bear hug. "We're family, son." Kat, Ted's daughter, joined in, wrapping her arms around Andre. "We love you," she said simply. Later, as their parents stepped out, Andre and Kat swapped stories, he about photographing a new Bali resort, she about a secret plan with Chelsea, her cousin. The inheritance from his parents gave Andre freedom, but the loss still gnawed at him. Kat nudged him. "You're kind, you know, donating your photo earnings to charity." They shared a conspiratorial handshake, dreaming big, until their phones buzzed with Anita's summons to the family meeting. Outside, Naomi and Chelsea huddled over a phone, watching Naomi's latest video. She was launching a handbag line with Kat, stepping away from modeling, a bold move that might ruffle their mother, her manager. "She'll get over it," Chelsea said, ever the practical sister. Time to cut the apron strings. They groaned about Bill's wedding at the country club, his affair with Haley, his slick way of defending guilty clients. "He's scum," Naomi spat. Their phones pinged, 7 o'clock at Anita's. Duty called. Back at Orphe Jean, Leslie sat quietly, lost in thought. Jan, her coworker, noticed the sadness in her eyes. "Thinking of Alan?" she asked gently. Leslie nodded, her voice barely a whisper. "It's still so empty without him." Mona, another friend, chimed in, steering the talk to the Dupree family drama unfolding at the club. Leslie's temper flared when Danny's slap to Haley came up. "Good for her," she declared. "You can't wreck a woman's family and expect her to smile about it." Jan mentioned Vanessa finding broken glass in Danny's wake, an outburst Leslie understood all too well. "Nicole's inspiring," Mona added, "but she's got her hands full with this mess." Leslie agreed, her heart heavy for them all. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the family gathered at Anita and Vernon's, tension thick in the air. Bill's wedding loomed, a wound no one could heal. Danny's tears still echoed, Martin's nightmares lingered, and Leslie's crash had set it all in motion. For this family, the gates weren't just a boundary, they were a battleground, and the fight was far from over.